Welcome to the France 24 debate, day 17 of the war in the Middle East, and as the missiles and the drones keep falling, the US president's done something of a U-turn on needing help from his friends and allies. Trump's calling for a coalition to keep open the Strait of Hormuz, an international grouping no less. The thing is, no one ally has yet replied yes, present and correct. We are behind you, Mr. Trump, nothing of the sort. The US strikes on Iran's Kharg island on Friday the 13th sent a message to Tehran, but it didn't take away the potential threat to shipping in and out of the Persian Gulf. For Trump, this call to arms, this call to stand together is something of a turnaround. On March the 7th, he told the US network CBS, "It's a bit late of the United Kingdom and others to send ships. He didn't need British help anyway to win this war." Now Trump is calling on NATO allies to join him in the war that he started on February the 28th without consulting them. Sure, there's a common interest in keeping the Strait of Hormuz open, but would it even be at risk if Trump hadn't started the whole crisis? Here to discuss the situation, specific and of course in a wider context, we have here in the studio Michael Benamoun, Director of OPY, Europe's War Institute. Michael, great to see you as always.
Hello, Mark.
On the other side of the studio, Anna Creti, an oil expert and Professor of Economics at the Université Paris-Dauphine. Anna, thanks for being with us.
Good evening.
Joining us from afar in Barcelona, Julien Barnes-Dessy, who's Director of Middle East and North Africa Programme at the European Council of Foreign Relations. Great to see you, sir. And Michael Pregent joins us, former US intelligence officer and national security consultant. Michael, as always, pleasure to have you on board. Before we let the panel loose...
Thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
Good man. Before we let the panel loose, let's get this update from Karis Garland on Europe's reaction to the Strait of Hormuz crisis.
After Donald Trump called for global efforts to secure the Strait of Hormuz, Germany's response has left no room for interpretation.
We are ready to ensure safe passage through the Straits of Hormuz diplomatically. However, there will be no military participation.
Trump has warned of a, quote, very bad future for NATO if members refuse to help reopen the waterway through which a fifth of the world's crude supplies and a substantial amount of gas normally run. The German Chancellor, however, said the Iran war had, quote, nothing to do with the alliance. On this, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer agrees. He said Britain was working with allies to reopen the strait, but promised his country wouldn't be drawn into the wider war. Meanwhile, in Brussels, European Union foreign ministers are discussing their options this Monday. According to the bloc's foreign policy chief, one of them is extending the mandate of Operation Aspides, a naval mission that protects ships in the Red Sea, to the Strait of Hormuz.
If we want to have security in this region, then it would be easiest to actually already use the operation that we have in the region and maybe change a bit.
Spain and Italy, though, said they weren't fans of the idea.
We believe that Operation Aspides and the current mandate are appropriate, so no changes need to be made.
I don't believe these missions can be extended to the Strait of Hormuz, partly because one is an anti-piracy mission and the other a defensive one. I believe that diplomacy must take precedence.
Launched in 2024 to prevent attacks on trade vessels by Iran-backed Houthi rebel forces, Aspides relies on a few warships at any one time, like this French one. As for France, President Emmanuel Macron has suggested countries could use warships to escort tankers and container ships as a defensive measure, but only once fighting around Iran eases.
Karis Garland there are clearly options. Let's find out what the panel thinks about what should happen next. Michael, can I bring you in first? Michael Benamoun, Director of OPY, Europe's War Institute, former army man in Qatar, Kuwait and the Emirates as well. So you can give us a response on a number of levels, I know. What is your sense about what happens next here? Because clearly the Strait of Hormuz is at a standstill.
Yeah, Israel was operating in the area, doing crisis exercises with America and the UK. We knew that in case of a large war, that the Strait of Hormuz would be lost, and now it is lost. And I think America is therefore losing this war. The question is, when will America recognize that defeat? Will it take a couple of days? Will it take 2 weeks? Maybe when Trump meets Xi Jinping in beginning of April, maybe this is going to be a moment, a way for Trump out of this conflict. When that happens, what you're going to see is a Persian Gulf without America. You're going to see basically 4 countries leading the way diplomatically to restore shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. You will see France, the UK, India and China probably working together to find a diplomatic settlement with the current Iranian regime to ensure safe passage of vessels, civilian and also military. Without that, there is going to be no ships, including military, who will try to pass the Hormuz Strait. It's just too dangerous, and it's not worth the risk. No one is going to risk a military ship being sunk actually in that area. Especially for Mr. Trump. So no, I think the sequence is a recognition of America's defeat, and then France, UK, China, India coming in to find a way out of this crisis.
Okay, you say America's defeat. Of course, Donald Trump will completely disagree with you, as you well know. Let me pause you, please, Michael, and bring in Anna. You can get back, of course, later. Anna, this situation, of course, is making oil prices go up and up and up, which is hurting everybody who has to fill up a car or heat a home, or basically anybody who uses anything to do with oil products.
Yes, once again, we have also the measure of our dependence on the hydrocarbon sector, in particular oil, and concerning Europe also gas. However, it is concerning Europe, we are suffering from something that is an indirect consequence, because the shipping was not going to supply in a majority share Europe, but was mainly directed to China. And I think that you're also right to say that the role of China is very important also in the solution of the conflict. This is actually the country that in their economy, they are the most impacted ones. For us, the problem is that we import the risk prime that is actually increasing the oil price. And we have also seen something which in the energy arena is quite new, in the sense that the day when the G7 has decided to release the strategic petroleum reserve, by releasing a quantity that was never left to the market in a so rapid way, the oil price has not really reacted downwards, but they have, at the contrary, re-increased again above $100. So to say that the margin of maneuver, even in the economic way, is quite limited. And once they have decided to release the strategic petroleum reserve, there's nothing else that can be done except a diplomatic solution to pass through Hormuz.
Anna, thank you. Let's take a closer look at the importance of this meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping. US officials trying to downplay the narrative that the Strait of Hormuz crisis is going to get bigger and bigger, but urging a focus on the substance of the upcoming president's meeting, should, of course, it go ahead. Let's bring in this report from Luke Schrager.
For US officials, if Donald Trump delays a visit to China in 2 weeks, it'll have nothing to do with his asking Beijing for help with trade traffic in the Strait of Hormuz.
The postponement, if it happens, would be because the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military believes that he should stay in the United States while this war is being prosecuted.
US and Chinese delegations had been hammering out details in Paris over a meeting from the end of the month between the US president and Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping.
What we've concluded today really is the general terms of a work plan between now and the meeting between the presidents, with the idea that there'll be potential deliverables at that meeting.
After months of trade chaos and tit-for-tat tariffs, Washington and Beijing agreed to a truce of sorts last year and worked on stabilizing relations. China committed to buying 25 million tons of US soybeans a year for the next 3 years. The latest talks indicated Beijing could be open to further agricultural purchases, including poultry, beef and other crops, along with discussions over creating mechanisms to help manage both trade and investment issues. However, recent US moves to investigate burdens or restrictions to US trade targeted 60 economies, including China, and raised the spectre of further penalties, irking Beijing.
We expressed concern about the potential disruption and damage the possible outcomes of these investigations could cause to hard-won, stable economic and trade relations between China and the United States.
Stability has long been key for China in international relations. While it maintains large oil reserves, Beijing is a major buyer of Iranian and Gulf oil, and its economy depends largely on trade. With an eye on the war in the Middle East, it recently revised its growth projections to their slowest level in 35 years.
Luke Schroeder there, Xi Jinping, perhaps then the Trump whisperer or the Trump enforcer. We'll have to see how that develops. Let's get back to this issue of Europe's reaction to Trump's call to help to try to force the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and bring in from Barcelona Julian Barnes-Desi, who's Director of Middle East and North Africa Programme at the European Council of Foreign Relations. Julian, thanks for being with us. Were you surprised at Europe's reaction?
Look, I think initially there was a lot of confusion and ambiguity. You had the likes of the German Chancellor and von der Leyen coming out in strong support, and that was initially a surprise. But clearly there is a prioritization in Europe these days about keeping Trump happy, with an eye to what's happening in Ukraine and vis-a-vis Russia. The European strategic priority here is to ensure that Trump stays aligned with them towards that theater. And the result of that has been, for a lot of countries, a timid reaction to a war that is clearly illegal, a war that has no strategic vision going forward. And I think the question now of what we do in terms of a military response is now getting more uncertain. I think the Europeans don't want to get dragged into a conflict. They're very wary about the fact that this seems to be spiraling out of control. There's continued escalation. Trump is now looking to them to salvage the situation, and they don't want to be involved because they don't have a sense of clear strategy.
Julian, thank you very much indeed. But I have a sound issue with you, sir. We'll try and sort that out at this end, because I can just about hear what you're saying, and I know it's interesting, but our guests are having problems actually capturing it. But we'll try and sort that out, so please bear with us. Let's go to Michael Pregent, former US intelligence officer, national security consultant. Michael, always a pleasure to have you here on France 24. I know you're itching to contribute, so I'll just say over to you.
Okay, I just want to say a couple things. It's day 17, so I would like to counter the defeatist argument that your previous guest said. The U.S. Navy can open the Strait of Hormuz. We have those capabilities. We have anti-mining sonar, anti-mining detection, and we can actually destroy the mines. The mines are the biggest issue. And the ability for the regime, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, to mine the Straits of Hormuz has been negated already. The biggest threat to the Strait of Hormuz are anti-ship missiles. And we've taken away their ability to accurately target ships because their radars are down, their intelligence capabilities are down, and they're doing things by line of sight using binoculars. That's why they've hit a Chinese oil tanker. And the two tankers that continue to burn, the ones that are used in media narratives, those are their own tankers that were docking in Qasr, the Basra area of Iraq, that they set afire, that they attacked so they could demonstrate what they could do. No, the Shahed drone, the Shahed 136 cannot sink an oil tanker, but those anti-ship missiles are the biggest threat. So I do agree there's a threat if NATO comes into the Strait of Hormuz of an anti-ship missile taking out or at least damaging one of those naval assets. So I'm not advocating for that necessarily. But again, the U.S. gets 2.5% of their oil from the Strait of Hormuz. This benefits our Gulf allies. If it's open, they have mining capabilities that we've given them. This benefits China. The president does have leverage. This does not hurt the U.S. But now we have two conflicts, one with Russia and Ukraine, where Putin benefits from Europe buying Russian oil and gas. And now with this, Iran is not benefiting from shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. They are using it as leverage to get the international community to put pressure on a president who doesn't care about that.
Michael, bear with me. The other Michael in this scenario wants to join in. Michael Ben-Amoun.
Oh, I have served on a ship, on a military ship myself, the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle. I worked with the combat strike group Truman. And I want to say to Michael Pregent that I don't think that America's Navy is going to risk going there with suicide vessels, anti-naval missiles, mines, which are, by the way, they have laid only 10 mines. They could lay hundreds, thousands of mines. So I don't think this is worth the risk for the U.S. Navy, frankly.
You're saying
I know that Michael Pridgen wants to reply. Maybe
sure,
I will.
Michael
maybe
will.
I should,
he's that kind of a guy, and he'll
maybe
get
I
the
should
chance.
give him the chance to respond. But knowing a bit, naval planning, I just don't see it. And I think this is going to be solved again diplomatically, without America probably. And I'm not sure that America's Navy will be allowed back in the Persian Gulf when this is settled.
Michael Ben-Amoun, thank you. Michael Pridgen, would you care to comment?
He's using his military career against my military career. I have 20 years working the IRGC and understanding their capabilities. We've talked about an assault on Bandar Abbas and Kharg Island, so I don't want to use the military card here. But I think, the U.S. Navy doesn't have to send ships in to be able to open the straits. We have helicopters, we have underwater drones, we have a lot of capabilities. The straits is open, by the way. We're letting Iranian oil tankers out to kind of push them not to mine this place. Now, when you talk about mining capabilities, Michael just said that they could put 1,000 mines in. Yes. They could 17 days ago. They cannot now. They can't use a helicopter to fast rope down on a ship. They could 17 days ago. They can't now. They can't use these fast boats to go intimidate oil tankers. They could 17 days ago. They can't now. There's a reality on the ground, and there is a narrative being pushed out there. From a military perspective, and I would ask Michael to actually channel his former military self, this is an effective operation. The regime's capabilities are being degraded hourly. And there's almost an argument that they should not be able to control this key choke point that affects the world economy. So I don't understand. I mean, I think his argument is hopeful, but it's very defeatist, and I think it's not grounded in reality.
Michael, thank you. I'm bringing Michael Ben-Amoun in for one reply on that one, then I'm bringing in the others. Go ahead, sir.
It's true. I mean, capabilities have been reduced, but they still have, according to Israeli reports, 150 ballistic batteries, and many drones. I mean, it's true what Michael said about C2 command and control and about radars, but they can still inflict a lot of damage and destroy ships worth hundreds of millions of dollars, basically. But I want to let the other guest also speak a little bit.
One thing I'll observe is that from the two Michaels, we're getting a sense of the quality of the guests we have and the backgrounds they've got and the insight they're bringing to the argument. So thank you both for those comments. Anna, you wanted to contribute. Go ahead.
Yes, I don't have the same background and the same military career, so I can shift a little bit perhaps the position on a more economic and strategic point of view. I think that one thing is the feasibility of the operation. The other thing is also the political and economic risks that this would bring into. It is perhaps a step in which we could see escalating also the violence of the conflict, which is going also to exasperate this different position that we have seen, in the sense that the European countries are not to the point to back up this kind of operations. So I think that beside the risk of damage and entering in that area with many technologies that can detect and protect the ships, the other point is it is worthwhile to do so at this point. Especially because we see that the American system is getting a little bit insulated from the agreement of the alliance.
So in terms, you say, if Europe was there and ready to go along with it, yes, but Europe isn't, so
the cost
there's no
of
point.
doing so goes behind the logistic cost of just entering in the Hormuz and pushing out all the ships that are there.
But as Michael Pridgen points out, it's not America that benefits from what comes to the Strait of Hormuz. It's China, it's other countries, it's maybe Europe, it's...
Yes, but at the same time, we are suffering the cost of having a high oil price, but the cost of the military intervention, and my feeling is that we are not ready to endorse it.
Anna Creti, thank you. Let's go back to Barcelona to Julian Barnes-Dacey, who's director of the Middle East and North Africa program at the European Council of Foreign Relations. Julian, I hope we can hear you clearly, because I know you were making some very interesting points, but I can only half hear you. So let's try that one again. Were you surprised at Europe's reaction? Should Europe be taking part because it's Europe that might benefit? Or is this the right position that Europe is taking?
Hoping you can hear me now, but
clearly.
Look, I think 17 days in, Europeans have strongly turned against this war. I think there was some initial support from it, from the likes of Germany and von der Leyen and others. But 17 days in, there's a sense of what is the strategy here? What is Trump trying to achieve? Every day we hear a different message, a different narrative. Is this about regime change? Is this about constraining their military capabilities? One day we hear that the US military has it under control and everything has been wiped out in Iran. The next day Trump is coming out calling for European military support here. So I think we can talk for a long time about the tactical successes that the US Army may be having, but the wider perspective here seems to be that this is a mission without a real strategy, without an end game. And I think that is why the likes of the German Chancellor have turned quite strongly against it. They're very worried that the American leadership here doesn't have coherence. They're very worried that the Americans are falling into the escalation trap here of pushing it forward, escalating and escalating, but actually the Iranians being happy to pull the Americans into a war of attrition. Clearly there's an economic concern given rising oil prices, and Europe itself doesn't get too much oil directly from the region these days, but the global price of oil has a significant impact on the global economy. But also there's a significant concern that this war is distracting Western attention. It's distracting away from the strategic priority of Ukraine and Russia. It's pulling away military resources, not just from Ukraine, but from Asia. And clearly it's another body blow to any hope of a lingering residual sense of international law and that kind of rules-based order. So the Europeans are increasingly hesitant. They don't want to get involved. They're talking about a naval mission, but they don't want to use that until there's some sense of a clear strategy and endgame, and that will be based on a diplomatic route.
Indeed, Keir Starmer saying there'd be some kind of mine-sweeping operation being sent along, but it is really the slightest thing that the UK could have done, isn't it?
It's the slightest thing, and it's going to take several weeks for that to actually materialize and for those ships to move into the Straits of Hormuz. And the French have also dispatched some ships that way, but they likewise are saying that these will only be used as part of the aftermath of the conflict in terms of monitoring and safeguarding a deal that may emerge. But I think the Europeans are not prepared, and I think Starmer came out quite clearly today saying that even if these ships are headed in that direction, they will not be part of a defensive or offensive mission working with the US Navy to keep the Iranians out. They are saying that the Americans need to be de-escalating, need to be talking with the Iranians, and I think the focus in Europe is on that diplomatic route, as others have said, because they've seen Iraq, they've seen Afghanistan, they've seen this movie too many times now to have a sense that actually this is a path forward that leads in a constructive direction for either kind of strategic or economic interests.
Julian, thank you. Let's bring in some of Donald Trump speaking a little earlier. He was at the Kennedy Center talking about the refurbishment of that building. But of course, as ever with a Trump news conference, it then diverts onto various issues that he wants to talk about. And of course, the situation in Iran, key among all those kind of things. He was wasting no time when he started basically laying into a number of European leaders. Let's take a listen to just some of what Donald Trump had to say.
Some are very enthusiastic about it, and some aren't. Some are countries that we've helped for many, many years. We've protected them from horrible outside sources, and they weren't that enthusiastic. And the level of enthusiasm matters to me when we want to know, do you have any minesweepers? Well, would rather not get involved, sir. I said, for 40 years we're protecting you and you don't want to get involved in something that is very minor?
Donald Trump has a particular style, but he is the president of the United States. And when he speaks, it is important and it has repercussions, and it's important that we cover it. And in France 24, we try to do that and try to put the analysis with it to bring it into context. So what Donald Trump there was doing was actually trying to communicate with his base, the voters who find him alluring and interesting, and put it on their level to sort of keep them up to date with the argument that he's trying to put. Marco Prugen, you're not an apologist for Donald Trump. You're here for your analysis, and I'm coming to you to sort of get your sense of what this kind of tactic of Donald Trump is doing. Is it counterproductive? Is it something that is actually communicating with his base, or are people a bit tired of how he's doing this?
Yeah, I think everything's baked in here in the United States. If gas was $2, he's still unpopular with a lot of people. He's unpopular with the base because he's going to war. He's unpopular with the other side. I know anti-regime people in this city, in Washington, D.C., that wanted this type of operation, but don't like that Trump's doing it. Trump shouldn't be the PR guy behind this effort. I listen to General Kane and I listen to Secretary Rubio. I don't listen to Pete Hegseth and I don't listen to the president. He is a commander-in-chief. He's giving those generals the ability to conduct this operation. Now, when we talk about minesweepers, that's exactly what we were asked the UK to provide. They have some stellar equipment. We want to be able to use that. And the fact that it's 2 weeks away still sends a message to Tehran that help is coming. You know, the Marines are 2 weeks away, right? Those 2,500 Marines that are coming, they're 2 weeks away. These types of messages resonate with this regime. In their mind, UK is getting involved. Doesn't matter if it's 2 weeks away. If France is sending ships, they're getting involved. Doesn't matter if they're going to stay if they're going to stay in the Gulf of, Aden or the Gulf of Oman. It doesn't matter. But we are not going to put ships inside of the Strait of Hormuz to be sitting ducks, to be targets of opportunity for the regime. We're talking about minesweeping capabilities, which we've already started to negate. We're talking about these anti-ship missiles, where if you fire a drone, you fire a ballistic missile, you fire a rocket, the crew that just fired it is dead within 30 seconds. The counter-fire battery systems, the air assets flying over Iran's skies, unimpeded, daytime and nighttime, are hitting these launchers. Everything on 17 days into this, 95% of their launchers have been destroyed. Their drones, they can't do drone swarms anymore, right? That takes about 30 minutes to an hour to put in place, and that's a signature on the ground that we're able to hit. So there are a lot of things that are being degraded. Sure, they can launch a drone at Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar. They even hit Basra. Iraq is their ally. Iraq pushes out oil on behalf of the regime because they're being sanctioned, and they hit one of the Basra oil sites. And, a lot of these things don't make sense. But again, Trump is the speaker-in-chief and the commander-in-chief, and he's a civilian. He confused Tomahawk missiles last week, saying that Iran has them. They don't have them. They have a variation of it, a reverse technology version of it. But, he's a civilian. He uses civilian speak to talk about the military, and he messes up quite a bit.
In terms of where we are today, though, Michael, should we even be here, given the nature of how this all began on February the 28th?
Absolutely. This is something we've been looking at. You've got to remember, there's a sincere baseline for people that are against these forever wars, right? One of your other guests talked about Afghanistan. We've seen this movie. Iraq, we've seen this movie before. But what you don't know is who is funding that movie. In both cases, in Iraq and Afghanistan, it was the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the MOIS that funded the Taliban, the Haqqani Network, and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, funded the Shia militias, grew Shia militias, and then funded Al-Qaeda as well. Our forever wars were sponsored by this regime. So if you're against forever wars, if you don't like that movie, this is the movie you need to see, because this is day 17. This is what we do. And for the first time, because I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, on the ground, in uniform, and also as an intel guy after I left the military. But I'll tell you, this is the first time we've had the population say, what are you waiting for? Come in. And we've been able to give the Iranian people on the ground the ability to call in direct fire missions on 2 to 3 man besieged checkpoints in Tehran. We didn't develop that strategy until 4 years into the war in Iraq, when we gave Sunni tribal leaders the ability to call in a quick reaction force or Apaches, for close air support against Al-Qaeda, and it decimated Al-Qaeda. This is 2007, 2008, when we finally had success in Iraq. This is day 17, and it's the Iranian people that are calling in drone strikes and air strikes on besieged and IRGC military formations. This is a very different movie, and we're only 10 minutes into it.
Michael, thank you for now. Let's go back to Barcelona. Julian Barnes, Daisy of the Middle East and North Africa Programme at the European Council for Foreign Relations. Julian, You coined that phrase about a different movie. Michael, not necessarily criticising you, but sir, I'd like your reflection on what Michael was saying, that this is something that needed to happen, has to happen, and needs to go ahead and continue. What's your sense on that?
Sure. I mean, let me say a couple of things. First of all, as we talk about the efficiency or not of the capabilities the military capabilities to open up the Straits of Hormuz, I would just remind viewers that we also saw a similar movie in the Red Sea over recent years, where we had the Houthi movement, the group that controls northern Yemen, able to completely close off shipping through the Red Sea, despite a very intense US military campaign to try and reopen those waterways, a military campaign that President Trump was forced to pull back away from once he realized that it wouldn't achieve its end. So I would just note, look, we have a comparative situation here in terms of a maritime route that the US military, with all its might, failed to open up. In terms of the broader Iranian situation and the need to address that regime, I think absolutely the Iranian regime has been an immense problem for the wider region, has stirred up broader conflict in multiple areas. But we see again and again that the US Army does not have the strategic and political strategy to align with its military approach to connect the dots. And already 17 days in, we have a hardening of the regime. We have a new Khamenei leader who is even closer to the IRGC than his predecessor. And I would dispute some of this messaging about where the Iranian population is. A lot of the reporting coming out of Iran today is actually talking of an Iranian population that is in despair, that is suffering and sees itself caught between an Iranian regime that has no time for its rights and a US campaign that is involving indiscriminate bombing, targeting of state infrastructure, and a seeming strategy to push the country towards state collapse. And that is not a vision that the Iranian people are embracing en masse.
You mentioned Julian, the role of Iran across the region. Tomorrow we'll be discussing the situation in Lebanon, and we've got our correspondents there under the fire that is going on. And I'm seeing already on a different screen in front of me here someone from the Israeli Defense Force, Israel's military, giving a statement. So obviously that'll be something that will feed into what we'll be talking about tomorrow. Michael Pruitt, I know I want to come back, but I've got to come back to my guests here in the studio to get comments from them. Michael Benamou, you first, sir.
Yeah, I agree with Julian mostly. I think the Yemen-Houthi comparison is a good one. The Houthis are putting such pressure still in the Red Sea that some American ships, if not all American ships, cannot pass the Bab el-Mandeb Strait at the moment. And I think this is what you're going to see also now with the Hormuz Strait. It's just too risky and not worth having an American ship being sunk, even though the Iranians have been degraded, much like Yemen has been degraded a year ago. Trump, a year ago, sent $1 billion worth of missiles against the Houthis. It failed, and then Trump said, these people are brave, something like this, a statement saying that operations would end. And I think this is something we're going to see in a couple of weeks with Iran, And this is the moment when the Europeans are going to step in to ensure safe passage for ships.
Should there not be that movement already, though, to create that safe passage? Is that not a logical
It's too risky. It's just in terms of naval operations, right now, no one is going to risk a ship given the situation. And the mines and the suicide drones and the missiles. I mean, it's just a crazy situation, over there. So it's not worth the effort, honestly. So it's about having first a ceasefire in place, and then negotiations are going to start. Some European military vessels will be allowed in, perhaps some Chinese vessels, military vessels as well, Indian military vessels too. Unlikely that American military vessels will be able to enter the Strait of Hormuz, I think.
So we're hearing that the strait is staying closed. Michael, thank you. Let's bring in Anna Creti, oil expert and Professor of Economics at Université Paris-Dauphine. Tell us what you've gleaned so far and heard here. Give us your thoughts on that. Then I have a specific question for you. Give your thoughts first.
No, I think that there is really a wedge between the declaration by Trump and the reality of this war. And I have the impression that he has started this tremendous move and he was thinking that it's the same way as going into Venezuela, where he has managed the situation in a very short way and fast way, taking advantage also of the weakness of the political establishment there. However, he has moved towards another completely different culture, policy, and also another country that was somehow ready to react. And maybe he has underestimated this reaction. And he keeps trying to say, well, it is about to finish, it is nothing, and we are going to have the supervision of what is going on there, either politically and economically in the Strait of Hormuz. But as the more the time passes, the less we can believe that the solution of this conflict is going to be quick. So I think that there is a disconnection between the claims that he's doing and the reality and the risk of the involvement also of other countries. And of course, this is going also to create, you were right at saying that all of this is creating a lot of uncertainty, and the international trade of oil and also other commodities is inheriting this uncertainty.
The specific question I wanted to put to you was, what would you be thinking if you were Vladimir Putin right now? Is this your time to cash in? Is this your time to make lots of money? Is this your time to somehow reboost your economy, reboost your war machine?
This is what is going to, he has already made some statement and opening the way to say we still are there next to these countries, so on, to remind that also Russia belongs to the OPEC Plus, so he knows a lot about what is going on in the Strait of Hormuz, who is producing what, and he knows very well that beside the production of Iran, also the production of Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia is declining because they cannot ship what they produce, and their storage capacity is also limited. So he says, we have these resources and we are out of reach. We can trade through other routes, sending our ships to the other side of the world, reaching China and perhaps reaching Europe. I don't know about China, but it is clear that in Europe we have to resist to this temptation, also because I don't think it is worthwhile for us to buy oil and gas in this specific moment from Russia. But in any case, he's benefiting from the oil and the gas price being higher than it was three weeks ago, and he also needs to cash those reserves to continue, unfortunately, financing the war against Ukraine. So it is another unfortunate consequence of this conflict.
Michael Persian in Washington, was the US administration right to relax the sanctions?
On Russia?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. That's something that a lot of us opposed. You don't reward Putin in a war against a dedicated force on the ground that understands the language, that knows the neighborhoods. This is a dream for a U.S. military officer who served in Iraq and Afghanistan to finally get something right and provide weapons to a determined force on the ground in Ukraine to go against a geopolitical competitor or foe like Putin. So, yeah, absolutely not. We should not give any sanctions relief to Putin.
Michael, thank you. Let's come back to the studio. Michael Benamou.
No, I mean nothing much to add. I just want to say that I think that this situation is not in the favor of Europe for sure. I'm not pleased to say that America is on the losing side here. This is not making me smile. I am for America, by the way. I am for democracy. I wish we would do better right now. I wish we could help America in this situation. I think we cannot help America. And I think the best way we can help America is by actually staying right now neutral to cut a deal with the regime. And this is unfortunately the position we're in right now. And I'm very sad to report this because I don't like this regime in Iran also, by the way.
I was going to ask you that question.
But, no. I mean, there's just...
It's kind of hard to tell, right?
There is...
Thank you, Michael.
No, I mean, I worked with America in Afghanistan too. Maybe I served with Michael Pregent in Afghanistan back in the day in Kabul. You know, I mean, I'm on the safe side. I'm just looking like him at battlefield data.
Should the diplomatic angle have been kept on? Should they have sort of stayed with the diplomatic process, the negotiations, rather than basically starting bombing?
What I thought myself is that America would strike for a couple of days like they did before, you know, coordinating the strikes more or less with the Iranian regime, you know, by indirect diplomatic... Yeah, exactly, you know, controlling basically the escalation. This is what I thought would happen at the beginning of March myself. They've done something very different, very massive to destroy the regime. And so now we have something very, very different in our hands. And unfortunately, we Europeans cannot do more. We don't really have the naval assets to actually unlock the situation. It would require, according to plans, 30, 40 ships, to unlock the Strait and also the Persian Gulf, by the way, because this is 1,000 kilometers of coast that you have to control. So this is 30 to 40 ships for months and months and months. And we have so much to do in the Mediterranean, in the Baltic, in the Arctic. We cannot provide the Americans with dozens of ships to cover for what looks like more and more like a blunder, basically.
Let's go back to Barcelona. Final comment from Julian Barnes-Dacey, Middle East and North Africa Programme Director at the European Council for Foreign Relations. The Strait of Hormuz, as we come to the end of this programme, and I'll try and get a final statement from everybody. Julian, it looks like it's going to remain closed.
I think it's going to remain closed until Trump decides that he wants out of this situation. And I think the economic pressures and the political pressures he's going to face at home are going to come to bear on him, and I think are probably going to force his hand at one point. I don't think he has a willingness, the willingness to commit the kind of resources that would be needed to deliver both the security of the Straits of Hormuz, but some of his wider ambitions in Iran itself in terms of regime change and weakening the hold of the IRGC. So I think inevitably we're going to have to pivot back towards some kind of political diplomatic track. The question is what kind of concessions, what kind of situation comes out of that. I think there's a big risk that having unleashed this situation, the situation of Iran now is it's a regime that survives, and it looks a bit like Iraq in the 1990s or Syria over the last 15 years in terms of being a very big sore wound for a lot of countries around it and continuing to cause problems across the Straits of Hormuz. I don't think we're going to see stability returning to this area for quite some time.
Julian, thank you. I'm told I'm out of time, but I need a final word from Michael Pregent in Washington. Michael, your final comment, sir.
The U.S. Navy will open the strait, and I predict that we will have allies join us in that effort.
That will happen. You're confident that will happen, sir?
But we're seeing it. There's hesitancy, but it's going to happen. There's leverage.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. Last word goes to Anna Creti.
I hope that Europe is going to stand and not to react or to overreact, either economically and also politically.
Anna, thank you very much indeed. Thanks to Anna Creti of Université Paris-Dauphine. Thanks to Michael Benamoun of OPY. Thank you to Julian Barnes-Dacey of the European Council of Foreign Relations. And thanks to Michael Pregent, former US intelligence officer and national security consultant. Thanks to you all. And thanks to you for watching. Stay with us here on France 24.